So in these last steps in my painting, I'm really trying to do two things. I'm going to pay attention to any last details that need fixing, and also I'm going to give a lot of attention to the final texture. What is that finished skin supposed to look like? So right now, I'm pretty happy with how the bottom part of my painting feels, including this rock. It feels like there's a lot of variety of texture and marks there, and a lot of the color feels quite resolved and integrated. But the sky, the background up here, doesn't feel quite as finished to me, even though I've given them equal amount of time and layering. It just doesn't feel as rich up here. The kind of mark making is a little bit different than that down here. There's a little less variety of color. So I'm probably going to have to come in and do another layer up here. And as I do that, what might happen is this might start feeling more finished than what's happening down here. And even though I really like what's happening here, I might have to come back in and add some more texture, add some more marks. I might have to, as you say, kill my darlings. Eliminate some things I really like in order to make the whole painting work. I can't have one or two parts feel really successful if the whole painting doesn't feel successful. So just, don't be afraid to do that. If you were able to do it once, you can do it again. But the whole painting needs to work, and I think that's something that will really help you move towards being a much more mature painter. I've also put out some texture paste, which I'm going to try to use evenly throughout my paint. So I'm going to mix some of that into every single one of my brush strokes that I'm applying now. This will help build up some thickness. I'm also moving into using some natural fiber brushes, which I just feel are going to add a little more texture and interest in this last step. So, this last part of the painting is just different for everybody. For some people, you're finished after step 5, but here I am in step 6, still doing another layer. And, sometimes you have to do 7, 8, 9, 10, even more layers until your painting feels resolved. Really depends on the kind of style, the level of texture that you're going for. Every painter and painting is going to demand something a little bit different. So I'm just mixing up a little bit of white and some blue to try to capture the blues that I already have here. Color is not such a big problem on my paintings. But the kind of integration of brushstrokes, it's very kind of swoopy, and which I try to capture these cirrus clouds, and there isn't quite as much of that elsewhere in the painting. So I'm going to try and handle this in a more unified kind of way by using these more textured brushes. I might also start using a palette knife just on my palette, just to kind of handle some of that texture paste that's there. You can see that's not quite dark enough. What's nice about using these texture paste too is it's going to keep the drying time a little more open. By open, I mean it's going to take longer to dry. And that will give me a little more time to manipulate things, to add in other colors if I feel like. Maybe you're going to want to do something a little more blended in your own paintings, in which case this is when I would be using some kind of retarder, which would slow the drying time. With acrylics, it's not going to slow it that much. Maybe you get like an extra 20 minutes of open time, but that can be enough to help you blend things to your heart's content. Sometimes I like to have a few brushes going at one time. Right now I've got a big one and a small one for more detailed areas, and I haven't really mixed up the paint very well on my palette, and I've done that purposely just to get a little more variety, because I feel like there's a lot of variety going on down here, and even though I'm just using blue and white right now up here, I'd like there to be a bit of variety in this area as well. Sometimes I'll have two brushes going, one for light and one for darker colors, so I don't have to constantly keep washing my brushes. It'll keep things from getting too muddy. And I'm just kind of doing this same sort of dancing sort of brush stroke that I use down below. Now this is important here. Here's a detail that really needed fixing. I need this sky to feel like it's going to go behind the rock. It was like it was kind of afraid of the edge before. So at this point, I've finished the painting in a way that I find very satisfactory. I've built up thicker paint, not necessarily in every single spot, but in a way that feels balanced throughout the painting. And I've also integrated color in a way that I feel is very balanced and harmonious. I've brought some of the warm yellowy colors up into the sky. Notice there's not a ton of it because it is the sky. And I've also brought some of the cool blues, this cobalt blue, down into the shadows here, and made a few little kind of highlights with it here as well. Right? It's primarily not blue, right? It's primarily these kind of warm earth tones here, and primarily these sort of greens and yellows, but there's a bit of blue in here connecting it to what's above. So it feels like a much more holistic painting, texturally and color-wise. So, of course, there's probably always more you can keep doing with the painting, but I think at this point I would at least let it rest, step back from it for a while, and just see, give it a little time and see if I'm happy with it. And once I maybe had some time looking at it, maybe I'll come back in and make a few last changes. But I think it is probably most of the way there.